On the eve of the outbreak of the UN-MCR war, Undersecretary General Avasarala ventured to Jules-Pierre Mao's personal yacht, the Guanshiyin, to attempt to negotiate with Jules-Pierre Mao to convince him to return to Earth to face consequences for his actions during the Eros incident. Avasarala was transported to Jules-Pierre Mao's yacht on board a Leonidas-Class Battleship, which remained close by to provide escort while she met with the business executive. However, seeing the opportunity to take out the only person who suspected his involvement in the protomolecule research that led to the Eros incident, Deputy Secretary General Aaron Wright ordered Jules-Pierre Mao to turn on Avasarala and attempt to take her out of the picture. While attempts were made to do this using Jules-Pierre Mao's own personal security on board his vessel, they ultimately failed, thanks to the presence of Bobby Draper, a Martian Marine. It's during this firefight on board the Guanshiyin that the UN-MCR war started. With the conflict now started and chaos reigning across the system, it's around this time that Deputy Secretary Aaron Wright had received information that Jules-Pierre Mao's security had failed to take out Avasarala and that he had lost contact with his contacts aboard the Guanshiyin. Realizing that Avasarala and her small security detail had likely taken control of the yacht, he ordered the unnamed Leonidas-Class Battleship to open fire on the yacht. Lining up for a shot, the Leonidas-Class Battleship fired a salvo of torpedoes against the unarmed civilian yacht. Immediately seeing the threat that this posed to the vessel, the security detail of Avasarala began preparing to evacuate, with Bobby Draper and Avasarala boarding the Razorback, the racing vessel once used by Julie Mao during her racing career, while the remaining members of the security detail boarded the shuttle that had brought them over from the Leonidas-Class Battleship that was now firing at them. Both vessels were able to depart the yacht right as the torpedoes from the UN escort vessel impacted the Guanshiyin and destroyed it. As a result, the Razorback was forced to lay dormant in the debris field in hopes of not being discovered. Now, this plan had almost worked, with the Razorback basically completely powered down, drifting lifeless through the debris field when, unfortunately, a scan from the Leonidas-Class Battleship revealed it as a ship. As the Leonidas-Class Battleship prepared to fire, the engine on the Razorback was reignited and the Razorback began to attempt to flee. Now, thanks to the Razorback's history as a racing vessel, it was able to outpace the Leonidas-Class Battleship. However, there was a problem. The elderly Avasarala was not able to handle the high G-forces presented by the Razorback under full burn, and the Razorback was forced to move at a slower speed. This made it vulnerable to the weapon systems presented by the UN escort ship. While this pursuit was ongoing, the Razorback sent out a distress signal, which was picked up by a nearby Corvette-Class Frigate, the Rosinante. As the Leonidas-Class Battleship was closing in closer and closer on its target, it entered hammerlock, the range in which it would be nearly impossible for the Razorback to dodge any torpedoes fired, and another salvo of weapons was fired against the racing vessel. It's around this time that the still distant Rosinante fired a salvo of torpedoes of its own, also toward the Razorback. As the crew of the Razorback saw a grim fate as inevitable, with torpedoes now flying at them from two separate directions, they were able to breathe a sigh of relief as the torpedoes fired by the Rosinante broke off into two groups, with three of them proceeding past the Razorback, detonating behind it and destroying the incoming torpedoes, while the other torpedoes took up formation around the Razorback, ready to carry out defensive operations. This bought time for the Razorback to once again attempt to outpace the UN escort ship. Meanwhile, the Rosinante fell into position in front of the Razorback to continue to provide fire support. Seeing now the presence of what they believed to be a Martian Navy corvette, the UN escort vessel fired a salvo of torpedoes not against the Razorback, but instead against the Rosinante. Luckily, the advanced PDC systems on board the Rosinante were able to defend it against this incoming salvo of torpedoes, as well as several others fired in rapid succession, in a desperate effort to break off the Rosinante's defensive efforts. As the number of torpedoes on board the Rosinante started to dwindle, hampering their abilities to defend the Razorback, a new plan was hatched. The Rosinante fired a salvo of torpedoes, not at the Razorback and not at the UN warship, but instead at the space in between them, creating a sensor blind spot on board the UN vessel. Then, cutting off the engine on the Rosinante, it quickly fell back behind the Razorback, flipping around as it passed through the plasma field left by the exploding torpedoes, and fired a salvo of torpedoes at close range into the engine segments of the Leonidas-Class Battleship, disabling its drive systems and leaving the vessel dead in space. With the UN escort ship now disabled, the Rosinante was able to rendezvous with the Razorback back, and both vessels were able to leave the engagement zone, having successfully won the battle. While this battle was relatively minor in the grand scheme of the UN-MCR war, it did result in the survival of Avasarala, who carried with her crucial information about Ehrenreit's involvement not only in the protomolecule research, but now in her attempted assassination. Ultimately, this engagement would make the crew of the Rosinante outlaws within the UN government, at least until the treachery of Ehrenreit could be brought into the light. But the war as a whole is a much larger topic, and if you'd like to learn about some of the factors that led to the war starting, I'll leave a link in the upper right-hand corner to a video I have on that. And if you have any other battles you'd like to see covered in future episodes of Battle Analysis and added to the archive, let me know down below. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.